The Black Death was history's deadliest pandemic, killing between 75 and 200 million people between 1347 and 1353. Europe lost approximately 50% of its population in just 6 years. Entire villages disappeared. Cities became ghost towns. Civilization itself seemed to be collapsing as the disease overwhelmed medieval society's capacity to respond. The plague originated in Central Asia, likely in rodent populations. Fleas carried the bacterium Yersinia pestis, transmitting it through bites. Trade routes connecting Asia to Europe became highways for disease. Merchant ships carried infected rats in cargo holds. Mongol armies may have catapulted diseased corpses over city walls during sieges, spreading infection deliberately. The precise origin remains debated, but the result was unambiguous devastation. The plague arrived in Europe in 1347 when Genoese merchant ships fled the Black Sea port of Kaffa. Rats infected with plague traveled in ship holds, their fleas biting sailors and spreading disease. Ships docked at Messina in Sicily, introducing plague to Europe. Within months, the disease raced across Mediterranean ports. By 1348, plague reached Venice, Genoa, and southern France. Within 2 years, it reached England, Germany, and Poland. No medieval society possessed defenses against this invisible killer. 3 forms of plague ravaged Europe. Bubonic plague produced egg-sized black swellings called buboes in groin, armpits, and neck. Victims suffered agonizing deaths within days. Pneumonic plague attacked lungs, spreading person to person through respiratory droplets. Mortality approached 100% for pneumonic cases. Septicemic plague infected the bloodstream, blackening extremities before death. Some victims died so rapidly, their symptoms barely appeared before death claimed them. Medieval medicine possessed no understanding of disease transmission or bacterial infection, making prevention impossible. Physicians proved completely helpless. Medical theory blamed bad air, planetary positions, or divine punishment. Treatments included bloodletting, leeches, and urine drinking, interventions making patients worse. Some physicians wore bird-masked costumes filled with aromatic herbs, believing pleasant smells prevented plague. Surgeons and physicians died alongside patients at rates exceeding 40%. The medical profession collapsed as practitioners fled or perished. Entire monasteries of monks died nursing the sick, devastating the church's institutional structure. Mortality overwhelmed society's death management capacity. Gravediggers died faster than they could dig graves. Bodies piled in streets faster than burial could occur. Cities dug mass graves outside walls, throwing corpses in by thousands. Paris lost 50,000 people in 1349 alone. Venice's death rate exceeded 600 daily at plague's peak. Entire families died together in homes, lying undiscovered for weeks. The psychological trauma of mass death created societal breakdown. Flagellant movements emerged as responses to perceived divine punishment. Religious extremists believed plague resulted from humanity's sins, requiring penance through self-torture. Flagellants traveled cities whipping themselves until blood flowed, believing suffering would appease God's wrath. Some clergy approved the movement, others condemned it as heresy. Though flagellant movements didn't stop plague, they demonstrated medieval society's desperation, seeking explanation and redemption. Anti-Semitic violence exploded across Europe. Christians blamed Jews for causing plague through well poisoning, a conspiracy theory lacking any factual basis. Hundreds of Jewish communities were massacred. In Strasbourg, 2,000 Jews were burned alive in 1349 despite plague appearing before persecutions began. Jewish populations fled eastward toward Poland and Russia seeking safety. Centuries of European Jewish settlement were destroyed within months. This genocide demonstrated how plague unleashed latent hatred and social violence. Labor shortages transformed medieval economy fundamentally. Massive depopulation meant fewer workers for agriculture and crafts. Surviving peasants gained unprecedented bargaining power. Wages doubled and tripled as landowners competed for scarce labor. Serfs could demand freedom and leave oppressive lords for better opportunities. For first time, common people possessed economic leverage against nobility. The feudal system began eroding as labor-intensive agriculture became uneconomical. Landlords' power declined as their labor disappeared. Noble wealth rested on peasant labor extraction. Dead peasants produced no income. Vast estates became economically worthless. Nobility faced financial crisis as income disappeared. Some nobles responded by raising peasant dues, triggering revolts. The Peasants' Revolt in England in 1381 challenged feudal hierarchy directly. Peasants demanded freedom and land ownership, nearly toppling the social order before nobility crushed the rebellion militarily. Trade and commerce collapsed during plague's worst years. Merchants died or fled infected cities. Trading networks dissolved as supply chains broke. Prices for surviving goods skyrocketed from scarcity. Wine, grain, and cloth became luxury items. Some merchants grew wealthy from speculation and price inflation. By plague's end, merchant classes had consolidated significant wealth, beginning capitalism's earliest development. The church's authority suffered devastating damage. Priests died at higher rates than general population while providing last rites. Some clergy abandoned their posts, fleeing to countryside. The church failed to stop plague despite prayers, masses, and pilgrimages. This failure shattered faith in ecclesiastical authority. Survivors questioned church teaching and priestly power. Heretical movements gained followers questioning Catholic doctrine. The Reformation seeds were sown during plague's devastation of church credibility. Religious flagellance and extreme piety dominated psychological response. Church purgatory doctrine terrified survivors who believed plague killed the unprepared. Wealthy individuals donated massive sums to churches seeking salvation insurance. Prayer, pilgrimage, and religious art became obsessions. Dance macabre art emerged depicting death as inevitable equalizer claiming nobles and peasants alike. Memento mori, remember you will die, became cultural theme pervading art and literature. Female religious movements expanded during plague's chaos. Convents offered women community and relative safety during social breakdown. Women mystics gained spiritual authority previously denied them. Birgitta of Sweden and Catherine of Siena achieved religious prominence influencing popes and kings. Women hospital workers and nurses replaced male physicians, gaining new social roles and recognition despite remaining subordinate. Artistic and architectural development stalled during plague. Building projects ceased as funds vanished and populations died. Painting and sculpture virtually stopped. Surviving artists faced empty cities with few wealthy patrons. Cultural production recommenced slowly after 1360 as society stabilized and wealth accumulated. The Renaissance later emerged partly from plague's elimination of medieval certainties and hierarchies. Medieval society never fully recovered to pre-plague population levels. It took Europe 150 years to return to 1340 population. Asia and Middle East required similar periods for demographic recovery. Global population dropped catastrophically, with some regions losing 75% of inhabitants. The scale of death defied medieval comprehension. Yet plague's aftermath paradoxically improved common people's conditions. Labor scarcity meant higher wages and better working conditions. Peasant revolts challenged feudal obligations. Serfs gained freedom and land ownership. Common people consumed meat, bread, and ale previously restricted to wealthy. Living standards rose significantly for survivors despite psychological trauma. Social mobility increased as rigid hierarchies weakened. The plague accelerated historical change trajectories. Feudalism's already declining system collapsed faster under labor pressure. National kingdoms consolidated power as nobility's feudal authority crumbled. Merchant capitalism expanded with surviving merchants accumulating wealth and power. The medieval worldview fractured as church authority diminished and rational skepticism increased. By 1400, Europe had transformed from medieval hierarchy toward early modern capitalism and nation-states. The Black Death demonstrated civilization's fragility. Medieval society, seemingly stable and permanent, collapsed within months under pandemic pressure. Entire social systems proved vulnerable to biological catastrophe. The plague reshaped European society, economy, religion, and psychology fundamentally. It remains history's most significant pandemic, killing more people than any war or disaster. The Black Death's legacy persists in modern society's consciousness, as a reminder that catastrophe can overturn civilization's foundations within moments.